Hey everyone, and welcome to the Landlording Podcast. I am your host, Tim Harstead, and this is the show to get the information on how to manage your investment properties and how to make them as profitable as possible, and to try to take some of the stress out of it for you and show you what we have learned. We manage around 300 properties in the south side of Chicago. So that's where our experience comes from. And we like to share that with you so that you can use that experience and help yourself make your investment as profitable as possible. Whether you're in Chicago or somewhere else, we would like to help you manage your properties better. So let's go. On today's episode, I want to talk about increases in pricing, where we are at with everything. This is going to be specifically talking about Chicago, but I think it applies across the country. So no matter where you are listening from, you could probably research these numbers and come up with very similar numbers and explanations. So I want to take this from two ways. One is looking at it as, how is my property going to perform over the next couple of years? And two, as many people fight with their tenants about increasing rents and the tenants wanting to know why we're increasing rents, this is going to give you a few bullets of things that you can show them that it's not, the landlords aren't the bad guys. We aren't increasing rents just because we're putting all that money into our pockets. Things are getting more and more expensive, and that is why rents keep going up. So the first thing, and one of the biggest ones I want to talk about, is property tax. So in Cook County, in Chicago, I was reading an article, there were over 200,000 homes or buildings or all of the above, that the increase in property tax between last year and this year, which is really the tax for 2022 versus tax for 2021, because we pay in arrears, went up over 100%, meaning that there are buildings that their tax was $4,000 and it's now $8,000 for a house. There are buildings that I've seen where, taxes were $15,000, $20,000 for a multi-unit building, and now they're $40,000 or $50,000. These are things that make it very hard when you are running on a shoestring budget, when you are cash flowing the very little that you are, especially if you have a mortgage. These increases are not sustainable without increasing rent to a tenant. So when we see prices go up so high, so quickly without notice, it means on that next renewal, we have to go up. If our taxes go up $4,000, that renewal may need to go up, 4,000 divided by how many units you have. Let's say it's a 2 flat, so you got 2,000 per unit. You need to raise almost $200 just to break even per tenant going forward, just to break even and keep your cash flow where it's at. Now, we had some really good times these last few years. And the next thing I'm going to talk about is interest rates. In 2019, 2018, we were in a spot where interest rates were so low that a bad investment can become a good investment. Meaning you could buy something that should not cash flow in a normal cycle or a normal world, but because we had interest rates in the 2s and the 3s, which is unheard of, it sort of wiped away all the bad that you could find. But now that interest rates is at 7%, 8%, you can't take the money out of your home. You can't do that BRRRR strategy as well as you used to be able to, because the cost of money is so much more expensive. So I can't go to the bank and say, give me $100,000. And then I know my rent increase is going to cover it right away, because that $100,000 costs more than double what it cost 2 years ago. So all these things add up to where there's nowhere to go. Going back to what I was saying, before these last few years, an investor would look to get $50 to $100 if they had a mortgage on a property. $50 to $100 per unit in cash flow was considered a good investment. Now we're seeing these things are going to override that, whether it's the rise in property taxes, the rise in interest. Again, we used to be able to cover some of that by going back and saying, hey, let me take the equity out of my home. Because when you look at, and I'll do an episode later in this season about this, the 5 ways you make money, cash flow is one of them, but equity is really where you make the majority of your money. And sometimes you have to tap into that equity to cover cost. But that tool of tapping into that equity without selling and getting that line of credit is becoming harder and harder to get a hold of because the cost of that money is so much more expensive now. So these things are going to force us to increase rents. And unfortunately, politically, we're going to become the bad guys as landlords because we're increasing rents to a point to keep up with property taxes. But these politicians aren't going to point the finger at themselves and say, oh, well, yeah, rents are going to go up because we have to increase property taxes. They're going to say, oh, the landlords are they're going to try to make us look like we're billionaires when most of us are trying just to hold on and try to make a little extra cash flow and try to have a retirement fund for when we're that age. We become the bad guys. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. And this is why we need to educate our tenants. Here is my tax bill. I talked to some people and they're like, well, no, I don't want to disclose anything. And, it's my private information, all that. First of all, I can go on Google and find out what you pay in taxes. So you're not hiding anything from the tenants that actually are being nosy. But if we can, as a group of landlords, come together and inform the tenants on why things are becoming more expensive, we can start to win back that vote. Because right now, the politicians that are raising property taxes but telling tenants that they don't have to get evicted, even if they don't pay for 5 months or 10 months, that we're going to protect you, those are the ones that are winning because we're losing those votes. If we can start to tell the tenants, hey, look, your rent is going up $200. Here's why. Our property tax last year was $4,000. It is now $8,000. So between you and the guy upstairs, I need to split that cost to recover that cost. I think the more that we can explain things like that, the more that we can get the tenants to be on our side and to help us vote out these politicians that are just taking advantage of the situation and trying just to get votes by making us out to be the bad guy. The next one I want to talk about, so we got interest rates, double what they were 2 years ago. We got property taxes this go around, and I'm going to have an episode later on about challenging the property taxes. I'm going to try to get someone on here that I can speak to, that can talk to us about how important that is. But if your property taxes keep raising and we don't, as a group, as a city, all come together and challenge them and try to get them lowered, they're just going to keep rising. So we really need to start that coalition and start making sure we're challenging every 3 years on your property. Make sure that you're taking that time to try to keep those costs down. So that's one thing that you can do. But again, I think education to the tenants, showing them these things that I'm going through and why everything is becoming so expensive is something that's worth doing. The third one I want to talk about is water bills. The June water bill just came out for some of our clients, and we've seen the increase. Even though there's not necessarily an increase in the amount of water used, we are seeing an increase in the price, and that is because every year since 2016, the city of Chicago has raised the water prices, and those prices continue to rise at the rate of inflation at least, and everyone knows inflation has been terrible these last few years. So the last 2 years, water bills have gone up 5% each year. So again, another reason why, in order to stay profitable, in order not to get foreclosed on and to not, to be able to pay for that roof when it deteriorates, we need to make money. Otherwise we're going to let the buildings rot, and we're not going to have places for people to live. So that's why this is so important, is because we want to have good, solid places that people want to call home that they can rent. And in order to do that, we have to be able to keep up with cost. So water has gone up 5% each of the last 2 years. Property tax has gone up tremendously this last cycle in Chicago. Like I said, 200,000 homes, up over 100%, which is just insane. And then the last one, I'm going to pull this graphic up, but the last one I want to talk about is just, materials of, to fix things, whether it's, a broken roof or anything. we're actually starting to see a slowdown. So lumber is coming back down. So that's good. Copper is coming back down. But we're still seeing a huge increase in bricks, up almost 25%. Gas, which is really what drives a lot of these prices, because we have to get, diesel is continues to rise the way it has been to get the steel and to get the drywall, to get the wood from point A to point B. By the time it gets to Home Depot or wherever you're buying it, it's going to be more expensive because it took that much more to get it there. So diesel's up 8.3%, drywall's up 5.5%, concrete 8.9, asphalt 14.8. So all these costs are all adding up. And again, as landlords, we want to keep these properties in pristine condition because we want our tenants to live in a place that they want to call home, that they're proud to call home. But the more these prices rise, if we can't keep up with that with rent, then we are going to have issues keeping up with the increase in property tax, keeping up with the increase in material costs. The landlords that are struggling are the ones that you go to their homes and you see, oh, this building's falling apart. And why is that? Because they don't have the money, because their tenants aren't paying. They're being evicted for, over a year. They have a 3-flat, but they only have one tenant paying. It's impossible to keep up with these price increases, pay your mortgage, do all that. And I think this is something that if as a group of landlords, we all educated our tenants of what's going on, sympathy and being able for them to pay the rent and stop complaining may or may not happen. But I think if we can get them to see the political side of it and get them to realize that the city of Chicago and the people that they are electing, that we are electing, are making it harder and harder for landlords to keep affordable housing alive, I think we will start to see that we can start to get the votes turned towards our side and get the people that are going to help us into office and not have to keep fighting against rent control, not have to keep fighting against these property tax increases. So that's a lot of things that, that are all adding up that we just need to work on. And some things that you can show to your tenants or tell your tenants about that sort of shows them why you need to increase their rent. And hopefully, we can work together and not as a group be considered the bad guys because we keep raising rent, when it's really the city of Chicago, the politicians, and wherever you are, this probably applies to you, that is forcing us to raise these rents to keep up with inflation and keep up with the pricing. I want to thank you guys for listening. Look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Please comment, like, wherever you're listening to. Give us a review. Let me know what you want to see and want us to talk about. I will be bringing on some interviews. We're going to have some good times. And I hope to see you guys all next time. Thank you.